So I can tell you right now, one of the places moisture is getting in is that there's no gasket in here. So whoever had that off before, they left the gasket out because there's supposed to be a rubber gasket inside of there. And so that's most likely where the water's coming in, and it's settling down in the bottom of that because there should be a gasket underneath that ballast. So we'll make a new gasket and seal that back off, and maybe that's going to take care of some of these corrosion issues. Well, all right, let's get set back up, and we're going to take a meter and we're going to check the continuity of these wires and make sure nothing's grounded, and also make sure that we have continuity. All right, so to check for continuity, all we need is a meter like this right here. And so we're just going to put it to where it'll beep, 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 beep whenever we get continuity. And we're going to probe some of these wires and see from this connector up to these connectors if we got continuity or if we have a short. So let's get set up here. We got to take the bulb back out because I got to get to the end of this cable just to make sure it's good. And so we didn't touch the bulb, so we're good there. So we'll keep that bulb. So now what we're going to do is probe this one to where it connects up to the ballast. So let's flip back over right there. And what we got to get is a tiny little piece of wire, because the connector over on the light bulb side has got little bitty holes. And so what we're going to do is actually put a piece of wire in there so we can check the continuity. And so I'm on my first hole, and so we're going to probe over here and we're going to check. So we got continuity, you can hear it beep. And then we're also going to check the other two. There's only 3 out of the 4. And just make sure that we don't have continuity. So we're good there. Alright, so now let's move the little wire over to the next one. And then we're going to check and make sure we have continuity there. Beep, beep. And then also make sure there's no continuity on the other ones. And there we go. So we're able to verify the cable's good. So now we know we don't have an issue with that. So this cable is good. So that's a good thing. Now we don't have to use this little guy as a replacement. We don't have to use that one. So we're good there. So next we got to check down to the ballast. We're going to check this little one here. It's got some corrosion on it. And so you can see the wire colors. So what we should get is if we touch one of these, they should come down to here as well. So we'll just start with the corroded one. So this is the yellow, and I don't know who's who, and I don't really care as long as it only contacts one of these down here. And so we just got to probe and see. So that one's connecting the third one up and nothing else, so that's good. So we don't have any shorts. And let's move over here, and we're going to check the brown one. So we're good there. So all the wiring is connected and it's not crossing anything. So we're in pretty good shape. The other wires are probably going to be this little driver over here, so we can check them. See if there's any continuity issues. That one's not connecting anything. So now what we need to do is take a minute and paint all these wires and get them to where they're not going to touch each other. Then we can put the bulb back in. I'll use that bulb that was the new one, and I'll put a new ballast on, and we'll see what we got. So let's get some wiring redone here and painted, and then we'll be ready to go to reassemble. Alright, so we're looking down where the ballast goes on the bottom, and you can see my wires down in there. And so there's little breaks all in them. And so what I'm going to do is use this liquidy stuff, and I'm going to use a small brush, and I'm going to paint some of this black gooey stuff on as many of those breaks as I can possibly find. It's already been opened up, the seal's been broken, it's had damage to it, so we're going to try to salvage it and save hundreds of dollars of having to buy another one of these. And we're just going to paint it. Now let's move over here and we'll paint up where that controller board is, because there were a couple of broken ones over there. So let's scoot around here. Alright, so right here is where that little controller card goes. That was all wet. It goes right there. And so we're going to paint where we can access inside of this hole right here any of these guys that had any breaks on them, because I saw one or two on a couple of wires in there. Green wire in there had a break in it. So we're going to paint this stuff on there. So now that should be all of the areas. We had a couple in there broken. This one looks okay, that connector. This one's got to get replaced. I got to just change all of that out over there. The ballast one is now all painted, so that looks pretty good. And I believe that is it. Alright, so let's flip over here and get to work on replacing these wires, and then we'll paint underneath there a little further, because there's a few more spots inside of there. I can go ahead and just paint them up real quick while I'm thinking about it. So now I got to work on removing these, because they are so broke up they're not going to be paintable. It'd be crazy to try to do that. So let's go ahead and take the bulb out. This is that blue bulb that we saw earlier, and it's a LED type, so we're going to get rid of that, switch it out for a white one. So it comes off the connector like this. Click. And so we're going to do away with that bulb. So now we got to tackle getting this stuff off. So we get our new pigtail, and this is a ceramic, but you can see the orientation is the same. It's going to clip into the bulb, and so yellow is red and brown is black. So B and B, brown and black. And what we're going to do is cut this one out and solder this one in there, and then we're going to use some heat shrink tape and get her all taped up. Alright, so we got everything ready to change out this little pigtail. So we remember, for this case, it's brown goes to black. And so now what we got to do, as carefully as we can, we got to cut these two wires loose, and I'm going to leave enough to solder. And so I'm going to cut that messed up yellow one off there, if my cutters will cut. And I'm going to cut that messed up brown one off there. Right there. And so now I got to get the insulation off without damaging things. So I left the little zip tie right there that's holding all that, keeping everything stable for me. So it's still on there. And so basically I pulled that off, so now I got to do the brown without damaging it. And so it'd be nice to be able to pull that up, but what I'm going to do is resolder the wires first, and then I'm going to worry about that zip tie. Alright, so let's get set up here. And to make life easier on us, what I'm going to do is down here on my wires, I'm going to go ahead and pre-tin them. And so let's get some solder and get these wires tinned. That way I can just stick them together inside of there. Then I'm going to do the same on these up here. Put a little bit of resin on it and try to tin those. That way the wires will stick together for me. So before you do anything, when you're doing the connector, you got to make sure that you slip your little jackets on there, because if you forget those, then you won't have any way of sealing anything. So go ahead and put the jackets up on the connector like that, and then what I'm going to do is just touch these together, and I'll dip the wires in resin, and then I'm just going to carefully tin those together. Let me get my wires oriented right. So I can get them lined up straight. And there's the black to brown. Now we just got to do the same thing on the yellow. And there we go. So now we got our wires on there. So now what we got to do is try to get that yellow one back up out of there, because its insulation is gone. And so what now I got to do is cut that little zip tie that's holding that on there. And there we go. So we pulled the old zip tie out. So now what I want to do is use a tiny little zip tie right here after I slip these down. And so now I got these wires free. And so I carefully pull them up. And I'm gonna put my insulation over the top of them. And then we'll zip tie all that back together. And so now we just got to heat that up and shrink that. So a handy little thing is one of these little torches right here. Let me zoom out a little bit. So this little guy puts a flame out sideways, a little torch. And so I can heat that up real easy. And there we go. So now we got her insulated. So now all I got to do is get a zip tie back in there, and that's where, using the old hole, see, I can slip the zip tie down in there and hopefully get that to come back around. And so then all I'm going to do is tighten that zip tie down using the old zip tie hole to lock those wires back in place. And there we go. So now we got our new little pigtail on there, and we went black to brown and red to yellow. So we just got to cut off our zip tie, and there we go. So now we got our new pigtail installed. We don't have to worry about that old wiring. The rest of the wiring we've painted, and everything else looks pretty good in there. So I think we're in pretty good shape with our wiring. Now we can put some things back together. We got rid of our old janky one. Not much money so far. We got a couple dollars in the pigtails and a couple dollars in that liquid insulation. And we'll see what we can do here. Alright, so let's get set back up, put everything back together, and see if we can get a light to work. Alright, so with the new pigtail on, let's just check our continuity one more time. So I'm going black, which used to be brown. So let's check, make sure we got continuity. So it's that one and no others. And then this is the yellow. So it's that one right there. And no others, so that's good. So we're in good shape. Everybody's sealed up. So now we can start putting some things back together. So now we can put our cover back on. And we got that one done, changed out to the white. So now, we still don't know. We know the bulb was okay, I guess, because it was a new one. So we're going to put that bulb back in, and then I'm going to install the other ballast. So we'll do the bulb one more time. Let me get a glove. Quite an annoying bulb to put in, no doubt. But our bulb is back in. So now we can close that door up. And let's flip over here and put our little messed up thing. Like I say, this one's bad. It looks like it's got so much corrosion. I don't see any way that that's going to work. And there's really not a good way to clean that out because it's been waterlogged. We're going to put it back in there. It mainly moves the lights, but it shouldn't prevent the light bulb from working. And so that guy goes back on. Like that. So now all we got left is the ballast down here, and I got to find something to seal that ballast area off right there. So I got a big O-ring that might work. Let's see if that provides enough seal for us. Alright, so here's our original ballast, and so we changed the bulb out and it didn't make a difference. So now we're going to change the ballast out when we do the reassembly. So I'm not going to use the original, I'm going to use the replacement. So the connector connects up onto the back right there. And then you spin it around. And then the little connector that I had to redo all the gluing on connects up on the other. So pretty simple like that. So it feels like that O-ring is sealing, so I think we may be alright with that O-ring. So now we got it sealed up. And there we go. So we got our wires all redone, a new ballast put in. We're going to try that same bulb again. So let's head over to the car and do an install and see. And then if everything works, I'm going to change that bulb out for what the owner's wanting, is these LEDs right here. So we'll change out to those and we'll see how they do. Alright, so with everything all buttoned back up and the wires cleaned up, let's reinstall this little guy and see if it's all going to work right. And there we go. So now we got our xenons burning bright. We got a white light over here. We got the white light over on this side and the xenons over there too. So everything looks good with all that. So I think our problem must have been the wiring and then also the ballast. So let's get her took back off and I'm going to pressure test it and just put a little air inside of it and spray some soapy bubbles around and just make sure we don't have any seal leaks. And then we'll be able to put it back together and do the final assembly. So let's go back to the bench and let's get us some air pressure on it. Alright, so back to the bench one more time, and because I'm concerned about this seal right here where that lens got taken off sometime in the past, what I'm going to do is pressure test this thing with a little bit of air and some soapy bubbles and see what's going on. And so what I'm going to do is drill a tiny little hole right there that is just smaller than one of those needles that you pump up like a basketball or something like that with. And so then I'm just going to heat the end up and I'm going to poke it down in that hole right there. And then that's going to allow me to have a seal that I can put some air on. And then, like I say, I'll just seal that back up later on. So all of these covers have seals on them, so they should seal up okay. And then what I can do is just put a little air in there and then I'm going to spray around this seal right here with some soapy bubbles and I'm going to check and make sure that that's not leaking. So let me get my soapy bubbles. And all I want to do is put a little bit of air in there. And I'm going to look for bubbles. So everything looks sealed up good on that side, so let's flip it around and check at the bottom. Yeah, so everything looks good and sealed up, so it looks like whoever took the lens off did a good job of getting it sealed back up because there's not any leaks showing anywhere. So it looks like we're in pretty good shape now, so we're all sealed up. So now all I got to do is just seal up that little hole I made in there with some of that liquid seal. Alright, so with the LEDs installed, let's fire it up one more time just to test and make sure. And there we go. So there's our LEDs shining bright. And we got our regular lights in place. So now all we got to do is button it all back up, swap out the driver's side light for the LED, and we're ready to have everything done. So we'll get set up over there and change that bulb out. I'll show how to do that on the car in case you want to change these out on the car. And then we'll be ready to put all the nose back together. Alright, so you saw me change the D1, the xenon bulb out on the bench several times, so you kind of got the feel for it. But in case you want to do it on the car, you don't have to take all the light module stuff out unless you have issues with the wiring that had to be fixed like this car did. But if you just want to change that bulb out, you can take the wheel off, access this little panel right here, and you don't have to take the front or anything off. Then you can just grab that little tab up top and pull down, and that gives you access to the D1 bulb right there. So it works the same way. All I got to do is take my fingers and pop the little catches. Remember, they go to the outside. Pop the second little catch and it goes to the outside. And then you grab the bulb and you see it won't come out, and so you have to twist this one for the driver's side. It's going to have to rotate this way to get that cable to clear, and so you rotate the bulb around until you clear that cable, and then out comes the bulb. So then we just disconnect the bulb. Alright, so with everything working again for the lights, it's time to button it all back up. Alright, so with everything put back together, let's check it out and see if all of the bulbs work, and they're all white now. Alright, so there we go. So we got all of our lights working, everything's working, even the little BMW symbol there is working good. There we go, all the lights are back working again, and the BMW is happy. Well, alrighty, well thanks for watching.